Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Candidate Connect. It is September 18th, and as many of you know, of those that are running for City Council, we have a lot of new people, a lot of new faces, a lot of first-time folks that are running for office, and only two incumbents. So last week we had Will Chin, and today we have Chris Eck. Hey, Chris, how are you doing?
Great, Alicia. Wonderful to see you. And thanks so much for this opportunity.
No, you're welcome. This has been honestly, this has selfishly been super educational for me. And kind of learning all these things and hearing more about the people that are running, whether they're an incumbent or not, but also getting to hear more kind of direct conversation and being able to talk about things in context. So I really appreciate that everyone that is running, for the most part, has volunteered to do this conversation. So again, thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we kick it off with you being able to have the first 2 minutes to talk about yourself and let people know who you are.
Thank you. Yeah, well, again, thank you for this opportunity. I believe it's really great for us to be able to share information in a variety of ways when we're campaigning. And so I think that this is a great forum. So first, I want to share a bit about me and where I come from. Originally from back east, Pennsylvania, came over in the 80s with my family. My name is Chris Eck. I guess I should say that first. Chris is short for Christine, and either one is fine with me. So if you see me out there in the community, either one is fine. My husband and I have been married for almost 20 years, and we have our youngest child at home along with our two pups. And we love our Westgate home. It's our forever home, and we love the city of Edmonds. Proudly, my oldest is in Oregon, and her husband and her stepsons, they all live together down there. And she just earned her master's in social work. So I have to brag. I have to be a bragging mom.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So she's kind of following in the family roots, as it were. And she's now currently a mental health counselor. So I'm very excited about that. I'm also incredibly privileged and honored to have been elected council member for position 1, this position I'm running for re-election for this year, a little less than 2 years. So it was off cycle in November 2023 when the position became open. So I won that election, and immediately we dove into budget. Why I ran the first time and why I'm doing so again for a 4-year term is really a couple of reasons. So first, at my core, I'm committed to serving my community. It's very important to me, and specifically using my experience and skills and talents to serve others. It's a huge part of my values, and I'll talk a bit more about service, I'm sure, in a bit. I also ran then and am running now because I'm motivated to see all of Edmonds considered in all decisions. It's concerning to me before I got onto council, and still at times now, that we have areas in Edmonds that historically haven't gotten a lot of focus or, in the past, investment, or even really discussed in council. So equitable representation on council means consistently keeping in mind all neighborhoods, including those along Highway 99, and also hopefully helping those neighbors feel just as valued in our city as everybody else. So that being said, it's important to me to point out that it's important to me to maintain the look and charm of our downtown business district and all of the reasons we and so many visitors are drawn to Edmonds. It's vital that we maintain it and keeping it look as it does. When we're in a better position financially sometime down the road, which we're working on, I hope to be a part of investing in our other neighborhoods in addition to the bowl, including those along Highway 99, like I mentioned, so that we are thinking about everyone and focusing on our whole community.
Thank you. And you already started touching on some things that I wanted to be able to talk to you about. And especially after coming off that conversation with Will, I recognize that these conversations are going to go 2 different ways. Because again, you and Will are kind of in this position, right? So you have a different understanding and experience level of things that has been happening in the city than those who are the people that are running now to be in that position. So you can hopefully answer things that that others have not been able to because they haven't been in this position yet. And for anyone that's watching us live, and I see there's a few of you, thank you. If you want to put a question or a comment in the chat function, I should be able to see it, and maybe we'll be able to ask some of those questions should time permits. Let's talk about Highway 99, or let's just talk about being outside of the bowl. I've lived in Edmonds now for over 11 years, but the first 7 were 236 and 99. So I was in South Edmonds. Now I'm closer to the bowl now, kind of in the Perrinville, Seaview area, Perrinview, if you will. And I would say one of the things that happened coming out during the pandemic and maybe coming out of the pandemic too, was that there was, for a brief amount of time, some attention and love given to South Edmonds. You know, they had moved one of the summers. They did have a summer market down there. We had the kind of the mini city hall that was in that area as well. And now they're both gone. And so can you talk to that a bit? Because I would say, especially around the summer markets thing, I just thought that was really cool, because I used to actually live in those apartments that were right there. So I was like, man, as soon as I leave, they do something cool like that. But then it went away, and frankly, without conversation, it was just gone. What's your take on that? What, in your opinion or in your experience, what happened there? What happened to that representation that was there for a minute and then was just gone?
I mean, I will give you my view, right? Since that was, a little earlier in the pandemic, but also want to point out, several years ago, before my family and I found our forever single family home in Edmonds, we lived for quite a while elsewhere in South County, just really 3 miles away from where my home is right now, hop, skip, and a jump. And we lived in a townhouse condo, really pretty close to Highway 99. And so I relate to a lot of what you're talking about. And my understanding, for part of it, at least with the market, now this is just what I've heard, is that it would take up spaces for people shopping there in the stores from being able to park. I don't know if that's true. Second, why didn't we do a better job of negotiating? It's easy for me to be Monday morning quarterback, right? But it seems to me you don't let it just end there. You have a negotiation and you try to figure out another solution. Maybe that's not the best place for it, but maybe there's another place along Highway 99 in Edmonds that makes sense. So the discussion shouldn't stop there, and the focus sure shouldn't stop there.
Well, I mean, I do hope that something will come back down there, because I think that's also a part of the electorate that feels ignored, right? It's like everything goes to the bowl, everything goes downtown, and we love the bowl, we love downtown. I go down to the waterfront twice a week just to woosah, and I didn't mind that 5-minute drive from 236 and 99 to get down to Sunset. But again, when you hear about the new stuff happening, or activities or resources that are being given, it's rarely talked about doing it outside of that area. Is there anything that's in your thoughts right now as you're running for re-election about what you would want to be able to do, or at least try to advocate for, should you be reelected?
I have so much passion around this subject. So I had the joy of working with the Economic Development Commission as the council liaison last year, and loved it. Loved working with these individuals that have so much knowledge. When we paused the commissions and boards, many of them, there was this great white paper that had been created, this white paper on how to attract new businesses to Highway 99. So what I want to see is a closer look at that, along with doing more to protect the businesses that are already there and make sure that they feel well supported, protected from a safety standpoint, and also just generally supported so that they can be sustained. We're not in a shape to do that now, obviously, with our budget situation, but I am so excited to take the opportunity, because the opportunity is great out there to do a lot more, to add green spaces, to add many of the amenities that you are referring to that could help us even more celebrate the international district and the culture. It's currently a lost opportunity. And yeah, I've got a lot of energy around it.
So I look forward to hearing some examples about this either tonight or in other forums that you're going to be able to be doing between now and actual election day. So with that, let's go into your experience and your community engagement. So I'm going to bring up some stuff that was on your website and give you an opportunity to kind of talk through them. So of course, one is always around endorsements. And depending on, where you are in life, there are some people that are like, oh, it's a nonpartisan role. So why are you getting partisan endorsements from groups? But also partisan endorsements can come from individuals. And that's a conversation for another time. But let's kind of jump into these. So what do you say to those that are of that mindset of, oh my God, why are you getting all these Democratic endorsements and maybe not something that's across the board? What do you say to the layperson that's looking at these and going, oh, these are all kind of left-leaning endorsements, maybe not something that's in the middle or even on the other side? How does that play into who you are as a candidate?
Yeah, so a couple things. I first want to dispel the belief that I'm taking corporate PAC money, because I absolutely am not. I actually haven't received any PAC money so far this race. If you look at all of my contributions out on the PDC, they're all individuals. And I've been able to raise quite a bit because of my broad support. Second, my endorsements, I believe, here with organizations are pretty well-rounded. If you do a quick Google on me, it's obvious to find out that I've been a part of the Democratic Party for a while. And in really reality, since I was a voter. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to hide that fact from anyone. And I think for a lot of people who've told me this is the case, it helps them understand better what my values are. And my values are completely important to me. It's not all that I am, and it's not all that informs me, because you can see I'm also, I consider myself an environmental advocate, and I've got Washington Conservative Action. Extremely honored to have that. I have the Alliance for Gun Responsibility Victory Fund. I am extremely passionate about common sense gun safety. So absolutely, I will be very direct with you about me being affiliated with the Democratic Party, but it's not everything that defines me. There's Sierra Club, there's Fair Vote. I'm very pro-worker, and I've been honored to get iron workers. Hopefully I will be having more coming in as I continue to interview with them. It shows my values, and I think that many people actually value that.
Not a bad answer. And I will say that, I try to stay as neutral on all these conversations as possible. But I will say that one of the things that I have said out loud and in writing is, for me, is that even though a role can be nonpartisan, a person cannot be, right? A person comes in with a set of experiences and values that dictates how they're going to make decisions. So whether you get endorsement from a group or not, you do come in with a certain reality in what you are. And knowing what that is, you can still make decisions that hopefully is for the majority, and it's not just one side or the other. But I just wanted to throw that out there because I've kind of been open about that.
Sure.
So let's also go to, your experience. So at least in the community. And that's something that can also be a bit divisive depending on who you talk about. Someone say, oh my gosh, she hasn't lived here that long. So, what have you done? And I will say, I hate that mentality, because I will tell you, I will put, just because someone's been here 20 years doesn't mean that they know as much as someone that's been actively engaged, maybe over the past 5 years. And again, I think that's a discussion theory for a whole series for another time that could be talked about. But let's talk about, we know obviously you've been on council, both as an appointed person and someone that's run before, but you also talk about your time on the County Planning Commission and even the Edmonds Tree Board.
Well, and actually I never was appointed to council.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I was elected the full thing. And Will we also touch on my previous professional life? Because I do want to talk about that as well. But yes, I was elected 2 Novembers ago. I was on the Snohomish County Planning Commission, and I did that because as a human services leader, it felt really important to me to learn more about and have input to give from that lens on the Planning Commission. So that was a very exciting, very cool learning experience. And I really felt like I contributed pretty fully. And then when we moved here, I will tell you one fun fact. What made me choose the home that we're in is we have 7 lovely, very tall, each over 100-year-old Douglas firs in my backyard. And so my interest really got piqued by hearing about the Edmonds Citizen Tree Board. And then I applied and happily was picked and got to really be a part of learning about the Edmonds tree code and to be a part of that group to make recommendations. And that was very fulfilling.
And then you said you also wanted to talk a bit about your professional experience because you were with a large nonprofit until, recently. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, actually, even before that, I have been a longtime professional, basically working since I was 15. So I'm talking about decades of experience in both deep operations. So I get problem solving on a very complex level and in many, many leadership positions in multiple sectors. So countless people I've hired, coached, mentored, hired large teams, small teams. I've had to make very important decisions, very hard decisions at times, had KPIs that I've had to drive to and budgets that absolutely have had to pencil out. But most importantly, what I want to point out is that I would have not consistently been promoted and had success had I not known how to collaborate with people that don't think like I do and don't come from the same background or beliefs. And that include political. In the business world, you set that aside, you come together because it's your duty to figure it out and come together and solve a problem. And I have a very strong track record of doing that over and over again throughout the years.
I'm going to touch back on the tree board thing only because I feel like some of the newer folks that have jumped into aspiring for political office came from Big Red, right? and things that happened earlier in this year about, because we talk about, community assets, right? And Big Red for a lot was a community asset. And that's really what ended up getting people, keep using this word, I got to, activated was, these things started to come to pass, right? So people were finding something to gather around and start getting fired up about. And then it was like, oh, wait, there's other things that are happening here too. How does that make you feel actually? And I'm hoping it's a good thing to see people kind of, get involved and see something that's happening that makes them go, okay, I want to take this leap into at least getting more invested in the city, whether they're running for office or applying to be on one of the boards and commissions, which will hopefully most of them will start to come out of, being sunsetted. Again, that's a topic for another day. But how do you respond to that, to seeing people kind of getting fired up now, and especially at a time too where it's not the easiest time to run for office?
Oh, it is so easy right now. Okay, so I am one who has needed to feel like I'm plugging in to do something that is moving the needle for the benefit of our community, even before being on council. And that's why I applied and was on the tree board. I appreciate and am actually heartened to see the activation of a wider population within our community getting involved in issues. Big Red, such a critical issue and such a miss on the city's part. And I include council in that, right? We've tried to make good on that with this interim update that we've done to the tree code. That and the park situation in Francis Anderson. I personally asked many of the community members who came to council and wrote to us and talked to me, called me, to stay engaged even past those particular issues, because we really benefit when we have a larger population within Edmonds paying attention and giving input. We are much better for it, and I really hope it continues.
Let's also talk about some of the issues that you've brought up on, that you want to go about on your campaign site. And I'm just going to ask you to, it's one of those things, a TLDR, too long didn't read. We don't want to read all that, right? So, but for, again, that lay person that's just kind of jumping in and going, okay, what are you about? What are the things that you want to do? What is outside of the word salad, if you will? It's like, give an example of some of these things that you're going about. So the first three that we're going to kind of hone in on, you have something about housing abundance, supporting our businesses and attracting new ones, and growing public transportation responsibility. If you wouldn't mind, can you take a minute to kind of go into each one of those and kind of give like one of these tangible examples of what you want to do under, those caveats?
Absolutely. So housing abundance and housing in general is really important to me. And that's two things we didn't hit on previously. For the last 10 years, I intentionally leapt to go work in nonprofits, both of which, the two that I've worked at, have housing programs. Now, those were for our most vulnerable. So Cocoon House, which serves homeless youth and teens. I was there for 4 years. And then Volunteers of America, Western Washington, which is a large staff, over 900 people, most of which reported up through me and the 8 programs that I was VP of programs over. We had a big housing program region-wide, and very proud of the work that I did there. So housing abundance. We know that in the past year, we passed a comprehensive plan. And in it, we complied with state requirements around changing our zoning to allow for housing growth. Through that, there will be a larger variety of housing types. I believe that work needs to continue. Again, it all starts out with zoning. And it's important that people, whether you want to rent or buy, you have different options at different levels of affordability. All of this will not happen overnight. So because we changed the zoning last year does not mean that developers will come in right away and build thousands of units. So we've set the stage, but at this point, it's up to the market to decide if they even want to build in the areas where we're encouraging that growth to be focused. So I want to see us continue to work with developers to attract them and also encourage green building, which also ties into housing that also allows us to protect our critical areas, because we absolutely must do the two together.
And thank you for that. And I'm just going to plug planning boards and commissions, as I also was on, Edmonds planning board for about 6 years, last year's chair before I left. And then also, but what got me into that was when I was still in Silicon Valley, and I got the opportunity, I didn't see it as an opportunity at the time, when this little company called Google came in, and they kind of started leading the pack in a relatively small city, kind of almost the same as Edmonds is in Mountain View. But they were the first ones to really kind of start to really lean into and invest heavily in green building and green building practices. So I was like, I got to kind of see that from the ground up and then be able to kind of do some of that or advocate for some of that here. Shameless plug. Okay, let's talk about, so I say that to say that if anyone is really interested in housing and how it gets built or how it needs to be expanded, if you're going to be on the board of commission, get on those planning boards, and because zoning and land use is where it starts. It doesn't start at council. It doesn't start with the electeds. It starts with being able to advise and dictate what type of zoning can go in different areas. So that is the lesson.
To that point, I want to do a plug.
Yeah.
Get involved, plug in at any level. You know, boards and commissions are a great way, and I too hope that we can get those going again. It's really important to me.
Yeah. And of course, the second thing people always kind of talk about too is either, supporting our existing businesses or attracting new ones. It was like, we want a sandwich place in downtown Edmonds. I was like, if you want that sandwich to be $25, sure, right? Because
Mhm.
it's going to
Yeah.
cost more to lease space in an area like downtown Edmonds than it would be on 99 or in Furdale Village or anything like that. How do you want to attract new business, and what kind of new business would you want to see attracted into the city, and where?
Well, I mentioned this earlier. I feel like the more natural initial spot is Highway 99. And first, we have an amazing international district. In fact, I was just out there yesterday,
Mm.
and out to a business on Highway or SR 104, so Edmonds Way.
Yeah.
We want to help them stay in business. And like I mentioned, we're struggling to be able to help anybody right now until we get our budget sorted. But my wish is that we can do that so that we're not pushing them out by any business development that I think really needs to occur. We need to diversify business out on Highway 99.
Mhm.
So, for instance, there have been times in our history where people don't buy cars as much. So that alone can affect our revenue.
Mhm.
If people stop going to cafes, right, those things will affect the city's revenue. So we really need to diversify. So obviously we can't put big box stores on Highway 99. We just don't have space for that. And I don't know if we want big box stores, but we could have medium-sized businesses of all different times. Why not have a tech business out there? Why not have some of these amenities that we see in other places in our region? I don't know that I would even put a limit on the types. I
Mhm.
just feel like right now we don't have variety. And I would love to give people in Edmonds more shopping options and draw in more visitors to
Yeah.
go shop at them. And you're right. We've got wonderful sandwich shops elsewhere in Edmonds. Yes, go spend money in the bowl, and the next day come check out the International District, or go to Westgate here near where we live. There's great places down there across the street from PCC.
I know. Now I'm craving ono poke. Okay, here we go. So, all right. So, growing public transportation responsibly. This was interesting to me because I kept thinking about when they were putting the bicycle lanes on Ninth. Is that one thing about? Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and you're like, we don't ever see people on a bicycle. You're just taking up space. And what does that look like to you? I mean, I know I was very excited when Linwood Light Rail opened up, because now I don't have to worry about sitting in traffic trying to get downtown or even back home, from going to go and do activities and things. So when you talk about growing public transportation responsibly, what do you mean by that? What's your example of that?
I think it's really important to do what I believe we've been doing as a city, and to make sure that the roads we're encouraging public transportation to be make sense. So I did recently ask an avid cyclist around here that's part of a number of different cycling clubs about the complaint that I've heard too about the bike lanes on 9th. This was actually just last week.
Mm.
And he lives in Edmonds. And he said, no, actually, a lot of us are using 9th, and we really appreciate what has been done there. It's made a big difference for us, and we feel like we were heard. And not everybody will agree with my assessment, but I live not far from 9th, and I actually drive it all of the time, and I do see how I've never seen a problem with cars and bikes sharing that space or being in the intersection together. I invite people to actually, if you don't live in that area, check it out. I actually feel like it's working pretty effectively. Is it different from what people were used to? Absolutely. And I don't want to minimize what the difference is for homeowners there. But there is change from time to time, and we do need to think about sharing the road with other modes of transportation. So when I say responsibly, I think of that as how it was vetted, how we got the funding, and doing it in places that make sense.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then you had three others. We'll bring those up. So, of course, everyone was talking about environment. So, protecting our environment, promoting, honoring, and celebrating our diversity, and ensuring public safety of everyone in our community. And I definitely want to hear about, protecting our environment, but I really would also love for you, when you're talking about the last two, I think in this current climate, that there's a lot of either needing, or what does that mean to celebrate our diversity, when there are residents who feel afraid to come out or go somewhere, or think they're going to be picked up by certain law enforcement entities just for walking down the street and looking like they are. So have at it.
Oh, that's a lot. Do we have an hour? All right, because I do take all that very seriously. So let's separate these out. So
Sure.
Protecting the environment. I mentioned that we created a comprehensive plan, and then specific to our hubs and centers approach, where we're encouraging growth in specific areas, business also, and doing it in ways that keeps it away from our critical areas. And we also have a pretty firm critical code that, obviously, like any code, needs to be looked at from time to time, but right now that protects our critical areas. And we absolutely need to keep doing that. I'm very excited about moving forward and how we can even continue to focus on the marsh, work with the port on what needs to be done there to restore the estuary, so we can get the salmon running again. I'm excited about the idea of continuing to take care of our watersheds and our streams, and all of our avid volunteers here that are participating on a daily basis alongside city staff to keep that work and that protection going. So promoting and honoring and celebrating our diversity. We are getting more diverse as a city. We are not as diverse as other cities in Snohomish County, but we're growing, and I'm glad for it. I think we're a better community for it, whether you're from originally a different country, or your parents are, or your English is your second language, or whatever the difference is. We should celebrate that. And I'm happy that we've already started to do some of that with art on Highway 99. I think we need to do more of that, where we're specifically celebrating certain cultures, and really maybe something that we could do in the way of a cultural festival, when we have the ability to do that, or perhaps that's working with nonprofits to accomplish that. I mean, Edmonds Pride is one way we celebrate diversity. Having the DEIA Commission was another way to recognize that we value diversity, and I hope we can reinstate that commission again. Those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about. I think we can take it further to make sure that we all feel valued, included. Now, with what you talked about, people not feeling safe, and maybe this goes to the third category, because there's a lot involved in public safety, and it is the number one issue when we ask our community, right? Public safety. It saddens me that some community members don't feel like they can leave their homes, or take their kids to school, or go to the food bank. We do have it in our code that the police will not help, but they also won't hinder. Yeah. And as citizens, certainly we can show our support and help, go to the food bank, walk with people. Fortunately, I'm not hearing a lot of incidents in Edmonds of, I understand the worry should something happen. But right now, fortunately, I'm not hearing a lot of things actually happening. That's not to minimize the fear.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I know. Thank goodness for that. There's that whole fake police officer thing, but so it's
which as a woman scares me.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In particular, and a woman with daughters. Yeah.
All right. It's time to talk about the fun stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about something
Let's
fun.
talk about RFA and levy list. So obviously this, again, even when I was, initially talking about the RFA way early in the year, I had no idea it would get as contentious that it ended up being, and kind of still is. And then now we're on the heels of potentially having a levy lift voted into to another form of tax. What is your, I think I know the answer, but what was your position with RFA, and kind of what is your position with the levy lift?
And I'm taking sips. My throat is a little dry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So my position on the RFA, as a lone council member, doing the research and working with the other council members, was that this was the best possible solution out of 3 solutions we deep dived into. So one had been, do we start our own fire department like we had a very long time ago? Do we go back to that? Mm-hmm. And all that entails with hiring equipment, hiring firefighters, which is extremely tough to do all around the country right now. Staffing up HR to do that. I mean, everything, right? The whole kit and caboodle. Or do we see if we could contract with Shoreline? And we compared prices, we compared timelines for when everything would need to get done. It made the most sense, and I will stand behind that as a lone council member who voted to go put the RFA before the voters.
And now there's a lot of residents of all the audience questions I've been getting. A lot of them are centered around the levy lift, but they're also centered around kind of the greater sense of they're feeling taxed, like mentally, physically, financially, right? Because you have the RFA that passed, the levy lift, which might pass. There's also the cultural access sales tax. I think that's been pushed out till after the election, and there was controversy around that. The public safety sales tax, then potentially a B&O tax, and then paid parking. That's a lot. What do you say to people that are like, what are we supposed to do with all this? How can we say yes to all of these things? And how do we get to a point where we need to consider all these to, quote unquote, get out of any potential debt?
As a homeowner, as someone who comes from both a working class and a middle class background, who's worked with vulnerable people for a while, I get it. It's jarring to think about even just one of these, much less all of these together in tandem. Mm-hmm. You're right. We have set aside the cultural sales tax for now. Mm-hmm. It's too much. Let's look at that later to see if we even feel like we still need to go there later on this year. We'll get it back in front of council for a decision. The public safety tax, you probably know, already passed. And what that means is we'll qualify for matching funding to continue to support our police force with training and other things that they likely would not be able to do without us having this tax and the matching funding. The B&O tax remains to be seen. So where that's at right now is we have actually gotten the band back together. So the Economic Development Commission has gotten back together, and they're meeting again within this week to continue to talk about that, along with potentially paid parking. Okay. And while they're not the deciders, we're really going to look to them to frame up everything that they've learned by actually talking to business owners, which they've been asked to do, and to get input.
My next question.
Yep. And I also asked just last week that they have access to interpreters. So we're also talking to businesses where the owners may be, English second language, which I think is extremely important, so that we're really talking to a wide range of business owners, because they're also a priority alongside our community members. So it remains to be seen. We'll see what the Economic Development Commission proposes, what they found, and then obviously all council members have the responsibility of looking at all of that information and more to give the vote that they believe is the best. So that is not a for sure. We'll have to really take a look at everything that comes with our deliberation on that. The levy lift, let's spend some time talking about that. So as a homeowner, I don't want my property taxes to be increased. I get it. When I was elected, immediately I got a budget book like this, and it was learn, trial by fire. And it was good because along the way, as we were talking about every budget item and program department, I was also learning about deep dive each program and department along the way. And I, alongside everybody else, worked really hard in 2024. I think most of you know, didn't always agree about what the outcome should be, or even really where we were status wise. But we all knew, something has to be done.
Yeah.
And I truly believe it's a revenue gap. First of all, things have not kept, so costs have not kept pace with what we're getting in. So as an individual, right, if I'm getting paid a certain amount by my employer, then my external costs continue to skyrocket. And then I get an insurance bill, which is like twice what it had been. A lot of us go through that. It's mismatched, and you are going to continue to have a gap that just completely widens consistently. So we need to stop that. We need to change the trajectory. We did a significant budget cut of $8 million last year, which entailed not filling a number of positions that had been open. And some say, well, that's not really cutting the budget. Well, it's people we didn't hire, and it's staff we don't have to work for us right now. And unfortunately, people were also laid off. We also did a number of other things like sell some police vehicles, and much, much more to get to the 8 million. So that was the first measure we needed to take. And as things progressed and we borrowed 6 million from our utility fund, we found that that's not enough. More needs to occur. There is relief for individuals should the levy lift pass in November, who are at a certain income level below a certain threshold where they could qualify for some relief. And I hope that individuals who are even currently now struggling with their property tax will reach out, and we can connect them with the help to see, get them evaluated to see if they're eligible. And then should the levy lift pass, work with us to get connected to those resources. I don't take it lightly. I can't speak for the others on council, but I imagine they are not either. We each are individuals, and for myself, it's not something I would prefer to do. But right now, our chief source of revenue as a city is property tax. And we've been stymied by just the 1% increase cap that we could be doing and often have not been doing. So we have chosen to not find new ways of raising revenue for years now.
Yeah.
And sure have not been look at diversifying revenue and bringing in different buckets, as it were, of revenue. We haven't kept up with infrastructure updates that have needed to occur either. We've kicked that can down the road. So now we're in a situation where we're going to be growing, or at least our zoning is planning for that. So we have to have something so we can start to work on all of the things that we need to do as a city. It does sound like to some that when we say amenities will be cut further, or services will be cut further should the levy lift not pass, it's factual. We actually, as a council, passed a number of things that will need to be cut from the budget should the levy lift not be voted into action by the public. And those include more police cuts, more cuts to parks department, the planning department. And already we struggle and get complaints about not turning things quickly enough in planning, public works. So these things will actually occur.
So I got to do it. I got to ask it. Your colleague, who also serves on council with you, had a different answer to if the levy lift shouldn't pass, what would happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How much do you disagree with that?
Well, so you're referring to a remark that was made a few days ago by a current council member who said, and it was shocking, it was surprising, because we have had robust discussions now for a very long time on a number of facets of the budget, that we had like, I think the quote was roughly, 70, we're okay, we've got like $70 million of money.
Right. It was two particular things that he said. One was that the first thing he said was that, and again, you guys were just coming off your budget retreat, he said that, that there seems to only be one conversation happening one now, and it is, should it pass? But that he said that there should be two conversations happening, saying what should happen if it does pass and if it doesn't. So that was one thing that he was saying. And then the second part was, oh, we have this $70 million situation over here that we could potentially use should the levy does not pass. So is there any level of agreement on that, or is it two completely different topics?
Well, so on the first thing that you said, here's what's my thinking. Okay, so we absolutely do need to think forward, and we have been, should the levy lift not pass. And that's where we do know specifically where we will be making the budget cuts, and those are in the areas I just outlined. And we will have to probably, now this is just me as a lone council member, have to come back in a year or so with a lower amount for a levy. And nobody wants to do that either, to come back to the community with something like that. Because again, it's our largest source of gaining revenue for our city. The $70 million, honestly, I believe that council member has more of a responsibility to do the math and explain it in a public way, so we all kind of understand. The closest figure I can get is, so we think about our investments, right? Our investment portfolio. They amount to around 72 million right now. So if we break that apart, we have like $10,000 in ARPA. And that is like the most flexible fund that we could move potentially to the general fund. That's a drop in the bucket. The other things that he's talking about in our investment portfolio, there's restrictions around. So we can't just take, let's say, a loan we got for public works or something like that, and just take it and move to our general fund. There are, in city accounting, city finance, there are restrictions for moving funds from one account to another. Yeah. So again, I'm just saying the closest thing to that remark is the 72 million in our investment portfolio. And if that's what was intended, most of that can't be moved to the general fund, because when we're talking about the levy lift, we're talking about the general fund. So I would really ask respectfully that the council member be a little more specific with the public on what was intended.
Okay, because that set a whole bunch of things off once that, like I said, I was surprised when he said that. And I was like, okay, is there something that we were missing this whole time? And of course, a lot of people ran with that, right? And it also fed into some of this notion that the cuts that have been discussed, should it not pass, were, scare tactics. And are they scare tactics? And I do know, because I get on all these email lists, and I know that you're talking about assets and like the Francis Anderson Center and the whole clog pipeline that just happened. And I know that the Yes on A folks, emailed stuff out about that, saying, you see, this is why we need to do this, because of stuff like this. It's aged infrastructure that hasn't been, updated. But I think it has also put a lot of people back into a state of confusion, because like, who's right?
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, as a council, we've been working on this. I mean, worked on budget for years. That's part of your job, right? The council has the fiscal responsibility and creates the budget, approves the expenses, all of that. That's what we're chiefly responsible for. But since I've joined November 2023, I've been focused on solutions.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of blaming to be had all around for years of kicking cans down the road. We are at this point right now where we have to figure out the best possible solution to get out of this and to move forward. Just as many people say, well, maybe we don't need to take care of our parks. On the other side, there's many that say that they do really appreciate those. We have young families that appreciate having parks.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to feel safe. That is number one I mentioned earlier when we talked to our community in many different regards, feeling safe, like we talked about earlier, but also police force. We've had to reduce the police force, and we will need to reduce it further should the levy lift not pass.
Mm-hmm.
People, when they pay the kind of money to live in Edmonds, to pay for a house or to rent, expect a certain level of quality of life. And I'm not talking about icing on the cake with this levy lift. I'm not talking about us carelessly spending. In fact, as a VP of programs and being in nonprofits, things always have to pencil. If you don't have the funding, you don't do it. You don't have the program. So that's what I'm used to. So responsibility will be on council should the levy lift pass to not squander. We need to pay for exactly what we're saying we will, and still watch the budget very closely, because that alone will help greatly. But we will need to continue to scrutinize spending very closely moving forward, something I'm very used to doing as someone who's been in nonprofit leadership. So does that answer all the questions I think that you had?
I think so, but I do want to touch back on one more thing. And we talked about how the city is getting more diverse, and it is. I wish it would do it faster, but it's diverse on a lot of different levels. But Edmonds is still, we're popping now, and we're a destination, and we're a foodie town, and we're all this. We still have a significant older population. And so when we talk about all of these taxes, of course, there's been a lot of conversation around, seniors and those with fixed income that can't, tolerate or can't really afford to have, their property taxes and everything go up. So I am going to share one more slide. And I did share this with you earlier. And one of the things that I did before this call was, I was thinking about that calculator. So the city's calculator is the one that's on the left. And that's the one that's specific to the levy lift. And then My Edmonds News has a version that imports everything, all the different taxes, so that people could get a better sense of overall what is that increase going to be. So even though I feel like the city has been really just kind of focused on talking about the levy lift calculator and saying, okay, yeah, so it's $65 a month, if you spread it out every month, so it doesn't seem so big. But once you start to factor in everything else. And in the case for this one, I took out the Port of Edmonds because that's not a majority thing, but it's huge. And so now they're going from, we're not just talking about $781 anymore. We're talking twice that. We're looking at $1,589.06 if I did my calculations correctly. And I'm sure someone will call me out if I didn't get it right. But that being said, that's a lot. So how are you addressing, or how will you address those in the community when they're looking at this more, because we are getting closer to actual filling out ballots where people are going to start paying more attention to this? What do you say to the older adults in this community who are looking at that number and go, how can you ask me to support this when I'm barely getting by just with what I have?
I understand. And really, it's not like they haven't already, even prior to this year, experienced property taxes going up or to this point, because increases by the county are something that they feel. An increase in the school district's part of the property tax, they feel. We have not, so I don't know if everyone is aware. So I want to explain a little bit, and then I will absolutely address what you just said. So 9 cents on $10 is, if you look at it that way, is basically what we get as a city. No, 9 cents on $1. Let me correct myself, is what we get. So if you have $1 of property tax, roughly 9 cents goes to the city. That part has not been increased for quite a while. Like I mentioned, we've not been raising revenue And that's not an excuse to do it now. But what that means is we have not been keeping pace to pay our bills. And I work with vulnerable individuals, and it's not just senior citizens, although I understand for senior citizens that have had their homes for decades and it was paid off. And then you've got now taxes and utilities that are a struggle to pay. There is some relief also for utilities. If you didn't already know, I hope you're working with your utility companies to see what support you can get there. Currently, if your property tax is a struggle, you can you can talk with someone to see if you're eligible for support. And should the levy lift pass in November, those supports are still in existence. Now, I understand very well that those right above the cap will still feel it, right? But they won't be eligible. And I think it's still worth checking into that eligibility should the levy lift pass. And to me, it's some basic math. Costs have continued to go up, and our portion, the city's portion of property taxes, has not. And it's a pretty small portion, percentage-wise, of the property tax bill that people are getting. It's still painful. I as a homeowner, I get it. Yeah. I understand.
And so the last question I have for you before we wrap, and this is an audience question, but it's also one I'm interested in too, as someone who now works primarily with the older adult population in Snohomish County. This question has come to me as the director of philanthropy about things that we're trying to do in the services, that we offer. So I'm just going to brace you for it. So this person says, you voted to spend that $100,000 on that we forfeited on Burlington Coke Factory, and now this property tax levy lift. If it passes, their rent's going to go up. What do they do when they can't afford to see their rents go up? How can we address it? Not saying it has a solution, but there are real questions that are floating to the top, and I have a feeling as we get closer to election day, it's going to ask a lot more. So. Uncomfortable question, but a real question.
Yeah, I get it. Well, I mean, the two aren't connected, but I will speak to both separately.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So the $100,000 that was invested to look into Burlington Coke Factory, for reasons I shared earlier, our Highway 99 community deserves investment and support, as well as other parts of Edmonds. And at that point in time, before I think the real seriousness of our budget issues were fully visible for council and for our community, it felt important to me to do what a few of us have been wanting to do and actually put more amenities, community gathering spaces on Highway 99. So this was to research and to see, along with the property owner, if this was a viable spot to do that. It did not turn out that way, and we pulled out when we realized it was not going to work. But I, in the mix of things in the big picture, felt like, when are we going to invest in Highway 99, right? If we don't do it now, will it be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And I completely appreciate not everybody will agree with me. But the people that live out there are Edmonds residents as well. And they deserve amenities and shouldn't always have to come downtown for community spaces and many of the amenities that we do have in downtown. So separate issue, but I get it, right? It's about fiscal responsibility again.
Yes.
In my professional life, I have a lot of experience with multi-million-dollar budgets and getting things to pencil. So, okay, so I have empathy for those, such as my family, where your property tax bill may potentially go up if the levy lift passes, because of the levy lift. And that relief I mentioned a moment ago is something that I direct all community members to look into, and will even help connect them to those resources to see if they're eligible. We have kept property taxes have, I think, not been a true picture of what we have really needed to keep pace with costs.
Well, Chris, you're going to get the final word. That was my last question for you. So with that, you can take the next 2 minutes to close out and let people know what you want them to know.
Thank you. Well, I want to share that I really look at all of my professional experiences as well as my volunteer experiences and my interactions with the public every single day. Like right now, I'm knocking on many doors and listening to so many of our community members and their concerns and answering questions. But with my almost 2 years experience on council, I am doing the job right now, and I'm using my extensive operations and leadership experience to take on these difficult and complex issues and work with others who don't think like me to actually do the work of the community, to propose and make hard decisions. You know, I have worked alongside the rest of council, and we've gotten a lot of work done. We pushed to complete the comprehensive plan, which protects our critical areas and discourages sprawl, because if you do not have a plan, you will end up with sprawl, while also equitably distributing growth. And then keep in mind, like I mentioned earlier, this is like a 20+ year plan, so it's going to be over a long, long period of time. I pushed for more safety in the form of red light cameras at 2 of our most accident-prone intersections because of real problems we've been having in town with bicyclists, pedestrians, car accidents. Safety is a huge priority for me. I also jumped in feet first when I was elected. And when we started at around the same time to figure out the true extent of the budget issues, I hit the ground running and I dug into the work, not thinking about blaming others and criticizing, but thinking about, you know, solutions, being very solution oriented. And I'm part of attacking that issue, even though the millions of dollars we cut from the budget were very, very painful for me and so many, especially many of the staff and the community. I also have put in the time as a council member to do extensive research and come to council meetings prepared to vote and ready to do the work for the benefit of our community members, because my values mean I take it seriously and I do the hard work. I ask the questions and come to council ready. I'm using the deep experience I have working with others in my professional life and on council to collaborate with others who have very different ideas and opinions, because I am solution oriented. For too long, we've had council members in the past who seem to want to spend more time fighting with each other and bullying staff, quite frankly, rather than doing the work of our community. And I'm not here for that. I'm here to be a part of solving issues that are brought to us and looking for ways to make things better for Edmonds now and actually for our kids and grandkids. That's what we're really here for. And that's what I'm committing to, because my values are very important to me. And I love Edmonds. I strive to treat everyone, regardless of title or background, income level, and more, with the same level of respect. And that's how I carry myself. And with transparency and active listening. Even if we don't agree with each other, I hope we will at least listen to each other and understand each other better. We may not come away from the conversation agreeing, but at least we'll understand each other more. So anyway, I believe we're a much better community when everyone treats each other that way.
I agree. Chris Eck, thank you so much. Our hour is up. I appreciate hearing what you had to say, and it's full of context. So thank you so much. Everyone else, thank you so much if you watched live, thank you. For those watching later, even better. We're going to wrap this up next week. We have one more of these that we're going to do with Erica Barnett, who is also another city council candidate. So join us Monday at 7 p.m. for that last one. And then there'll be a wrap-up series later on in the month. So with that, thank you and have a wonderful rest of